Hi, I'm Zach Kazan, managing editor at Worn & Wound.
I'm Zach Weiss, co-founder of Worn & Wound.
And today we're going to be talking about a new release from Christopher Ward, the Christopher Ward C60 Lumiere?
Lumière.
Zach, you've spent some time with this watch recently. It's a new release. It's getting a lot of buzz. I think probably more buzz than I actually, if I'm being honest, expected, just based on press release and the normal cycle of excitement. And I wasn't anticipating that this watch was going to be so talked about, but having seen it in person now, I kind of get it. Before we get into talking about the watch itself, you're a big fan of Christopher Ward as a brand. I think you've written about them quite a bit.
Yeah.
You're a Belcanto owner. Talk a little bit about why or where this brand kind of sits in the watch consciousness today.
I think Christopher Ward has done a really good job, especially in the last 2 years, because I think it'll be about 2 years since the Belcanto came out, of really kind of taking a strong root in that consciousness. I think there's been a core enthusiast audience for some time. I mean, the brand is 20 years old, and they've been producing watches at a great number for many, many years. My first review of one was in 2011. They've gone through a few different, versions of themselves. Yeah. Though I would say continuously over the time that we've been following them, it's been a progression towards becoming a better and better brand. There might have been a few years where they sort of coasted at times, but then they would do something sort of big. They bring out a movement. They bring out a fun complication. And I think the biggest change started, I don't remember the exact year, but when they started bringing out their light catcher cases, and probably the third iteration of the kind of core C60 line, which is part of this is the C60s. The C60 Trident is their line of contemporary divers.
Yep.
Once they did that, they sort of hit a new level of fit and finish. And I think you could look at those watches at that time and just be like, wow, these are starting to really stand out for their price point.
Yeah.
It wasn't just a value; it was good design and good finishing at a slightly higher price point. They started to have to move up because they're doing fancier things, but still a good
very
value.
Fair, yeah.
Yeah, a very fair price. And then with the Belcanto, they changed everything, obviously. My video about that extensive video should already be live when we do this, so go watch that for that story. But I think that also showed to the world that Christopher Ward wasn't a sub $1,000 watch necessarily. They could do a very high-end watch and be very successful. And I think that really kind of broadened, I can't believe what they're allowed to do.
Yeah, I think so.
I don't think they could have brought this watch out a couple years ago and have gotten the same response. I think people would say that is way too expensive for a Christopher Ward. You guys have lost your mind, kind of a thing.
I think that's what's kind of curious to me about this release. This is not a Belcanto. This is not a 12X. This is not a revolutionary kind of game-changing watch. But because those watches kind of now sit in the rearview mirror of watch enthusiasts who follow the brand, I think they look at this in a slightly different way, and they notice some of the unusual or higher end little touches that they put on this watch, and it just kind of shows Christopher Ward kind of just executing at a higher level. And I think one of the things that is special about this watch is that it takes a little bit of that sort of higher end feel from the Moonglow watches, for example, Belcanto, the 12 and the 12X. It puts it into kind of a more quote unquote normal watch. This is just another version of their standard diver at the end of the day, but it has some nice kind of higher end touches. So what are your impressions of the watch itself after spending a little bit of time with it?
Yeah, so this is one of those times, I opened up the box for the watch, and very nice presentation. They have a new box. It was before I even put it in my hand or on my wrist, I was struck by the fit and the finish of it, but also really the proportions of it. The global light might have been the star of the sort of press release and the story behind it. We'll get to that in a second. It's the Lume. What was striking about it wasn't even that. It's really that this is a 10.85 millimeter thick, 300 meter dive watch. It's just beautifully proportioned. It's 41 millimeters, which once again, I see 41 on paper with a 22 millimeter lug, and I might go, eek, that sounds a little big. This is a perfectly sized sports watch for a modern sports watch. It's not trying, nothing vintage about this. Yeah. Modern sports watch, and it's so beautifully thin. I mean, we're still seeing the occasional 14, 15 millimeter thick dive watch, and it's the brand's you have to get it to 300 meters. It's well, you apparently can do it with an open case back at 10.85.
And a helium escape valve.
Oh yeah, and the one, just get to it right now. The one thing I could do without entirely is the helium escape valve, but I guess there's people out there like, oh, well, now it's a professional.
It's also just a flex on their part to say, like, we built this with this other kind of like element that puts another like challenge in front of us too.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, it is a hole in the case.
Yeah.
Essentially is a potential point of egress too for water. So, but yeah, and then, I put it on, and it is just this beautiful, low riding, well proportioned contemporary diver, super light. The head is 53 grams. On the bracelet with like a full set of links, it's 105. So I imagine right now it's like a little maybe under. I didn't weigh it, but I had to remove some links for it to fit my wrist. But then also the finishing on this is just quite striking. It's grade 2 titanium, has beautifully polished bevels on it. It has very nice brushing on it. The bevels run all along the bracelet here, which is smooth and elegant. I sometimes titanium can have a little bit of a rough feel.
Yeah.
This does not at all. This is as nicely finished of titanium as I've seen.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, it looks really nice. And like there is sort of this like knock on titanium that it is more difficult to finish and doesn't like look as nice as steel when polished. And I hear that criticism, and there are brands that like don't do like an elevated version of titanium. But this looks very nice. I don't know that it's like the highest like level of execution of titanium finishing I've ever seen, but like this watch costs like what, $2,400 or something.
Yeah, it's like
that. It's an insane level of finishing for a watch that costs that.
The aesthetic of it, like I said, it's modern diver. It plays on the Trident line, but uses this Globalite technology, which is Globalite is a product of a brand, and it's like a cast lume. It's a ceramic cast lume. So you have these massive markers on it, and that's really like, I don't know, the hook of the story of the watch, if you will. Was these giant mounds of lume. In reality, they look like sort of like large plastic markers. I think they're attractive, and they're stark and modern looking. If you blast them with UV light, these things pop.
Yeah.
There's a lot of light on us right now, so it probably won't glow too much when I take it away. But I have stood in a dark room with this, and it is very bright.
Yeah, no, we played around with the lume a little bit earlier today. It's genuinely pretty impressive, like when you get those, like all those blocks glowing. And like they really, like there's just a lot of lume on the dial. Like they lumed the logo, which I think is sort of fun just because there's always so much conversation about Christopher Ward's logo. Always, so they decided to just like go all in and lume it. And also I was really impressed with the bezel action on this watch too. It's quite loud. It's got some ASMR quality.
Yeah, let's see if you can hear this. Like,
yeah.
It's like, it's bordering on obnoxiously loud.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Which, hey. It's also a very nice feeling bezel, 120 click, locks right in place. There's no give like right here. There's a tiny bit of backplay right as you click it in, but that's pretty normal.
Yep.
Yeah, like none of the things that you sometimes see in a dive watch, which might give you a little pause, are here. And that speaks, I think, to their 20 years of experience kind of a thing. That they've been able to hone their manufacturing, as well as probably listen to a lot of annoyed forum folk.
Well, we know that they're in the forums. Like they still have their own forum that that they solicit feedback. On that forum still to this day.
And there's always something charming about a diver.
Yeah.
Right? Is it the most exciting looking watch on Earth? Maybe not. It's certainly appealing. I certainly like it. I like the gray tone in particular. I'll be honest, the orange and the blue, just in photo, didn't really do it for me. But I do like the gray dial, and the ceramic gray bezel is appealing. Maybe this is just me, but there's like an allowance for a modern diver to be sort of generic.
Oh, I think so. Yeah.
But that sounds like an insult. I don't think it's an insult. It's like it's about what it is. It's like a purpose-driven watch. Right?
I think it's a recognition, I think, that most people are not like us. They do not own like a bunch of watches or have any desire to like make watches like a primary hobby. They just want like a nice watch that they can wear every day for a very long time.
Yeah.
And for those people and for us too, I think there's often an appeal in something that just kind of looks, generic is not like the right word because it implies something negative, but it's like a traditional sort of like normal everyday sort of look that isn't openly playing on like hot horology concepts or something like that. Like the Belcanto, for example, which is you could wear every day if you want, but it's not what we would normally like consider sort of like an everyday watch that like an average person who just wants a watch would wear. But this is kind of that.
Yeah, maybe rather than generic, I take that back. It's not overly stylized.
Yeah.
Right? It just it is what it is.
Yeah.
And it's like very good at being that. One thing I want to point out that just is a sort of a design detail that I think they really nailed on this one, and is definitely something perhaps they didn't used to get quite so down, is the taper on this bracelet. So it's 22 down to 16.
Yeah.
Which, if our math is correct, I believe that is a 6 millimeter taper, which is...
That is a 6 millimeter taper.
That is a 6 millimeter taper. That is beyond average.
That's a big taper, yeah.
That is a big taper. I feel like they typically would go for a 2 millimeter taper on their bracelets, at least to memory, maybe a 4. But because of that, this doesn't suffer from the typical issues that I personally find with 22 millimeter bracelets, which is that they're just very wide and therefore make the watch feel larger overall, because you just have like a wider band of metal around your wrist.
Yes.
So because of that, the 22 millimeter lug width, which does suit a 41 millimeter watch, feels just way more appropriate. It's the proportions, that is good design.
Yeah.
Like, this is a watch I would wear on the bracelet, and I would think you'd really want to get with the bracelet, and I'm like not a huge bracelet person. I find them kind of annoying often.
Yeah. Anything else you want to say about the watch? It's chronometer certified movement, Salida movement, I believe.
Yeah, chronometer certified SW300, which is a really nice touch. I think that certainly elevated the price, but I think they probably reached a point of this where like we're putting so much effort into the finishing, so much effort into this global light stuff, like let's just put the chronometer in there too, kind of finish it. And it makes it a nice high-spec dive watch, right?
Yeah, it's a really cool piece. I'm really glad I got a chance to see it before it has to be sent back to Christopher Ward. I think I kind of understand like the hype around this watch a little bit better now. Thank you, Zach, for taking us through it.
Yeah, my pleasure.
And thanks to all of you for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time on Warner Wound.